Jeanette, thanks for making the time to be here.
Thank you for having me.
I know we've been trying to do this for for a few months now, but I trust the timing of all things, and I'm just grateful that we get to do this before the year closes off.
Likewise, it's going to be a beautiful journey that I know you're about to take me on.
Yeah, for the first conversation that we had a few months ago, I was like, yeah, this is someone I'm probably going to talk to multiple times. This is not just a one-off conversation. So I was like, why don't we just do a podcast, and then we can bring the conversation to everyone else, and people, other people can benefit from it. Because I feel like people like you and I, when we have conversations with people, we naturally want to dive beyond the surface, right? And so there's a lot of gold that we end up kind of like, channeling, I guess, or covering in a conversation, and naturally people feel inspired by it or impacted by it in some way. So I love the fact that this platform allows us to just record conversations and then just share it with people, because you never know which part of the conversation resonates with people, right? So um
Totally.
why don't we go into, well, before we go into your story, like I said off air, like we'll go into a little bit about contextually who you are, because it's the first time we're obviously having this conversation on this platform. How are you feeling right now as we approach the end of the year?
Grounded, rooted, peace, absolutely centered, happy, content with what 2022 brought, the lessons that it gave me, and really excited about bringing those lessons forward in 2023.
I love that. Are you, because I know when we spoke last time, you were supposed to travel to quite a few places. Like you were going to pack in like 5 or 6 countries in the last few months, right?
Yeah, I totally did. It's been really awesome. I'm really happy to say that December I get to be home. I love not traveling in December, and then we start up again in January.
Yeah. Are you still taking a break next year? Because I remember you saying that next year might be like focused on family and personal life for you instead of kind of client work and the work you've been doing.
So it's I definitely family comes first in 2023. Absolutely. I'm still working, but in a different capacity. Like my services are really offered for in-person retreats. So I'll be focusing on that and less Zoom time in 2023.
Mm. Yeah, maybe time to disconnect from technology, because we've been so connected to it and reliant on these last few years. And I think it's been amazing because of the situation we found ourselves in naturally. But then from time to time, we need to disconnect and ground ourselves and kind of breathe back into our bodies without the reliance of having a conversation or an interaction behind a screen, but rather in person, which is completely different with energy, right? It just feels completely different when you're in someone's in-person experience.
Yeah, it's not only is it more enriching for the me and my clients and everybody that gets to be like in our energy, but it's something that I've almost become addicted to, right? The in-person retreats. And this year was a confirmation that I've always thrived in an in-person setting. Running my retreats is where I shine the most. And I would like to put myself in places where I only get to shine at my brightest capacity.
Have you got a um a favorite place where you like to host retreats from the places that you've done so far?
So I love to host in California and Mexico. Those are well, first the state of California. Malibu is going to be the next one in February, and that's going to be absolutely divine up in the mountain, secluded area in Malibu. And then in Mexico, off of like south of Tulum, it's this biosphere, and it's a sacred land, and it's a beautiful
What
location.
what's a biosphere?
So I hope I'm giving this justice, but it is a place protected environmentally south of Tulum, about an hour down. And it even has like pebble roads. Still, it takes you quite a while to travel like 4 miles. And they live off the grid. Homes are run on generators, and there is Wi-Fi, but it is limited Wi-Fi, and it just feels like you are in pristine nature.
I love that. And do you share, like, do you get content captured when you're at any of your retreats, or do you keep them specifically private?
I keep them sacred. I keep them sacred, and it's after the experience is done, the participants get to decide to what degree they'd like to share and what can be shared.
Mm, okay.
I think
Yeah, no, I love that.
follow me and work with me because I'm very discreet.
Yeah, you were saying that last time. I think that in this world where so much is shown so publicly on platforms because we can, that there's something about working discreetly that just makes it that much more magical and mystical, I guess. It's just there is a mystery wrapped around it. And people don't want to share every part of their life either, and they don't have to.
Yeah, and the work that I get to dive in deep, it's sacred and it's an honor to be there supporting them, but it's their journey and I'm just a tiny part of their story. And it's not for me to show off their results or
Mm,
what doesn't happen. Yeah.
I love the humility. Yeah. Well, I do want to get into the work that you're doing and, how that's all come together so people can better understand in their lives kind of what the potential is of if they were to apply the principles that you teach, your perspective on the world, your perspective on spirituality and business. But just to cover a little bit of context in terms of where you grew up, because if I remember correctly, you're Mexican, right?
Sure.
Yeah, if you could share a little bit around where you grew up and I guess what that was like, because not just that, but I also know aside from the business stuff that you do, you've obviously been on a physical healing journey with cancer, and that's been a big part of your journey too, right?
So I've never had cancer.
No, but with the people that you've
Yes.
I guess that have been in your life, like your grandparents.
Yeah, I supported them. So I grew up, born and raised in Los Angeles, California. So I guess I'm technically an Angelino. Now I'm a first generation American, and my family and my descendants are from Mexico. Grew up a very tight knit, family oriented, everybody eats at the same time dinner table, and absolutely adored and loved that. And with that, I became very close to my grandparents. And that's when I first started experiencing or had the human experience of what cancer not just does to a patient, which was started with my grandfather, but what it does to an entire family and the untangling of beliefs and relationships, and most specifically, unconditional love turns conditional sometimes when people start to fight with beliefs and in healing. And through that journey, after my grandfather passed on, my grandmother was diagnosed. And one of the things that's really funny is that within my family, there was this thing that I now coin disease amnesia, and which our family almost forgot everything that we learned with my grandfather and didn't bring the lessons forward with my grandmother. And so at that point, when I realized that nobody was really opening their eyes to the opportunity to do things differently, I realized that the only way to help my grandmother was by giving her her power back, helping her find her power and her voice in a completely different way, new way. And from there, she ended up passing from complications of a stroke along with cancer. Um, People started calling me just all the time, asking me, how did you get this thing covered? How did you support her through these things? What did you do here? What did you do there? And a lot of the medical staff would even ask me questions about mindset work. And I wasn't even a mindset like coach or anything. I just knew that as long as they made the choice and they made the decision, they would heal. Whether it's, do you want eggs or do you want hash browns in the morning, whatever it might be, and giving them that power back. And little by little, I started getting mentored by quite a few different medical professionals in the industry, took me under their wing, taught me everything they knew about holistic and psychoneuroimmunology, and got certified in way too many certifications because I was trying to know it all. And
Wait,
very
let me just quickly ask to clarify that with in terms of all the people asking you questions and kind of coming to you, is that because of the way they saw your grandma showing up? So they were like, what is it about this person that Jeanette's helping with? Is that what it was?
it was the way that my
Okay.
grandma and the way that I handled family conflict, the way that I was able to facilitate medical conversations, but with my grandmother, which was she was not bilingual. So in the translation to help her understand and cope with it, because it was everybody's desire not to tell her she was going to go into hospice care. And I said, wait, we cannot take away that dignity to her. We need to be transparent. There is no healing if you don't know where you are. There's no changing. There's no power in not knowing where you stand.
Mm. No,
And
that
this
makes sense. Yeah.
and I think what people wanted from me ultimately was how to be neutral and loving at the exact same time.
Can you do that?
Was the question, do I do it?
Well, can we as humans do that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I actually find that's the most powerful place that we can be. It's in this place of power and peace when you don't need to do, prove, change mind, convince, absolutely nothing.
Mm. It, yeah, it's something I've been sitting with recently as we've come closer to the end of the year. Is like sitting in the stillness, and you know how you have chaotic waters, you can't really see to the bottom, right? It's not clear. But when the water is still, it's quite clear to see all the way through it. And you don't need to remove the water, it just has to be still. And in the same way, I guess our clarity becomes crystal clear when we're not being pulled this way or that way within ourselves, with emotions, with thoughts, with other people's external influence. So it's just cultivating that inner peace, which then allows you to then navigate whether it's something medical or whether it's something business related. Were there particular practices that you had to practice to then be able to show up that way around that time? And also, how old were you as well when you were doing this?
Yes, I think I was like 24, 25,
Wow.
24, 25. Probably the biggest practice or the most powerful line that I could ever say is, how can I love you best today? And asking daily, not just like my grandmother or who I was supporting, because I was also helping my two parents at home at the same time. So three people I was caregiving for. And really, how can I love you best today? And asking them what would support them, not how are you feeling? How can I love you best? And love will help someone shift their feelings.
Mm. You know, a friend shared with me recently. He said, um, don't try to teach, love, and love will teach."
Yeah,
And
it's
yeah, that was amazingly put.
yeah, that is all that's all the credit that I can give is that phrase of how can I love you best and honoring whatever they say. And I knew that this is the only way for me to be of service of
Was
the
there
highest.
something that was there something that inspired you to think that way, or to even ask that question?
Well, I kept seeing like nudges and people flinching, whether it was in a medical setting or in a family setting. How are you feeling today? And just knowing how complex the disease is, of like feeling about the future, the past, what's happening, the pain, the gratitude for medication, for example, like all these different, it was multifaceted. And I was like, oh, that's the worst thing to ask somebody, right? When there's a million thoughts going through their mind. What if I just ask, how can I love you best today? And it could be, can you pick up my favorite coat from the dry cleaner, right? Or it could be, can you wash my favorite pillow? I don't know, whatever it could be, but something that made them feel loved and that they couldn't do for themselves that ultimately will help them feel comfort.
Yeah, because I guess that can show up in different ways for people, right? So by asking that question, you're really tapping into their need, their immediate need that day, which can be so ever changing, especially in that kind of situation.
Absolutely.
And then how did things progress thereafter? Like once you kind of moved through that phase of caregiving, how was that affecting the work that you were doing at the time? Was that the same time you were in construction? Or did that come later?
No. So I was in construction, and when I invited my grandmother to live with me so that I can be her caregiver. And I also had two parents recovering from surgery at the same time. That's when we stepped away from construction because it was not healthy and it was not feasible. And so we stepped away, and that was the last time I ever uh, had a hard hat on.
What were you doing in construction?
So it was
Like,
restoration work. It was a family run business. So it was restoration work, and I was doing project management.
oh, okay, yeah, I thought so. I was going to say project management. So then how did you pivot into doing the work, I guess, that you're doing now? Because that's not something that happens overnight. Like there's definitely building blocks in terms of understanding who you are, who you want to serve, how you want to serve, and what you have to say. Like what is your impact like that? In my experience, because I've been going through that and I am still going through that journey, is it literally changes as I change and as I have more epiphanies about who I am and how I want to position myself. It reflects the way that I live my life and the words that I use and how I show up. So I'm curious if you could share some stuff around that.
Everybody has a journey, and everybody has a journey where they're picking up little coins along the way. And so I'm very grateful for my time and my experience working in construction. I learned a lot about toxic environment, like literal toxic environment. I'm very grateful for the lessons that I learned from my family through healing, right? And really learning about compassionate integrity and about helping them claiming their power back. And so bringing those two areas together, I wanted to learn more about specifically how to heal holistically. So I went into, like I mentioned, being a protege for some very amazing healers and holistic doctors in the world. Um, and I'm very grateful for learning how to help people heal medically, holistically, and HR companies, and started seeking me out. Well, I first reached out to them, letting them know that if they had any CEOs that were going through the cancer experience, that they could reach out to me, and I would be happy to support them so that the businesses could be fully supported, as long as the CEO's emotional needs were supported as well. And I'm very grateful for that experience. And along the way, when I was working with these CEO, specifically female CEOs that were battling with about 80% breast cancer, they asked me for some business advice, not claiming being a business healer like I am now or being a business advisor, but kind of like, if this situation arises, how would you have handled it? And it was really what if situations, but they really liked the way that my mind worked and being able to be compassionate and supporting their vision and making sure that their right hand felt supported as well during the transition of them stepping away from their role, handing off their role, and also knowing that I could be there for their new right hand. And as these amazing, beautiful clients healed and they came back to work, they wanted to continue working with me. And they all told me, Jeanette, your what if situations and questions really helped me understand where my business was in pain, where it was hurting me. And there's been a few women who have said, I believe it was my business, the way I ran my business, that was killing me ultimately. And so from there, I started being called a business healer. But I don't do traditional ways of doing business. I am all about spirituality and energy first.
That's why I
Uh,
love you.
I'm all about spirituality and energy first, and putting the intention and knowing what the end goal is. And the business will always evolve to the person's level of consciousness.
Hmm. Could you give an example of, I guess, anyone that you worked with in those early days that where their business did need healing, but they couldn't quite see it, just so there's a tangible example of what that would manifest as.
Right. So I wouldn't say that nobody didn't need healing. It's all multifaceted. Like we can't give the credit to like business healing. Like it is all together. It is somebody working on their previous traumas. It is somebody working in their household environment, right? It is somebody working with their health, somebody working with their mindset, their spirituality, and at the exact same time with their business. What has happened traditionally in the past is most people will go to a retreat center or like a healing place, completely change their life, change their home, change the way they think, change their wardrobe, change everything about themselves. And then they go right back into doing business this exact same way. So what I do is I just help them carve out this and looking at it in a really holistic, spiritual way. Now, if you're looking for an example, for one, I will give you a specific example. I can't give names because, again, I
Of course, yeah.
honor discretion. But I had this client that was supported by male mentors her whole life. And what she realized is that her specific breast cancer was a hormone imbalance where she actually had more testosterone than necessary. And she was running her business like a man. And she was doing it how her male mentors had done it, which is go, 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 drive, 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 go, 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 drive, drive, drive. Success is reflected in the bank account rather than success by my standards is freedom, time freedom. And so, and in time freedom, women, they're able to balance their hormones, they're able to rest and digest and bring in the magic of the feminine into business in all areas of their life. And so when this woman started working with me, she started getting back on her menstrual cycle came back. Okay. She was able to, her hair started regrowing just naturally. I mean, we didn't even do any health stuff. It was just mindset work. And it was just in slowing down and doing beautiful check-ins with me where she would tell me how her heart really felt in that day, in that moment. And so it was all about hormone regulation.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot to be said about how someone's internal nervous system essentially is operating and how that affects the outward results of whatever we do, but especially in business, if that is a big part of her life, which it sounds like. But it just makes sense that the inner world needs to be addressed first before anything external gets addressed, because otherwise it's just a temporary fix, right? Like you're not really going to the root cause. And I feel like that's what you do. You go straight to the root cause, hence why spirituality and energy comes first. And to me that makes logical sense as well. It's like you'd want to go to the root, address that. So addressing someone's internal universe first, and then the external almost takes care of itself, but can be handheld through that if needed, right?
Right. And when we're looking at the root, so like if you want a specific example within that, I always start at the schedule. The schedule lets me know their hormone regulation, when their cortisol is being spiked, what is happening on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis, and the frequency of resting. So we always start with the schedule, making sure that it actually matches this woman's lunar cycle and that it is supporting the outcome and the intentions of the business. So we start at schedules.
How does that affect men that you work with then? How does that look different if it does?
Yeah, it looks really different because what we do is they actually create their own daily and weekly because it's not so much regulated with like a moon cycle or like with a menstrual cycle. And men get to decide how much AKA feminine time they want to bring in increments. And it could be like silence. It could be like total silence, adding that into their schedule. And it could
And
also how they process journaling, and that journaling is not a marathon process, and that it has in time for integration.
so this next question that I want to ask naturally arises from what you've just said, and the answer may be the same, it may not be. Is there a difference you've seen now working with really high net worth individuals in terms of the blocks or the road bumps they face? And have you seen like a theme outside of just the schedule, albeit that might be one of them? But I wonder if there's a theme, because obviously they have financial success, and that is something that everyone who doesn't have that naturally strives for that or is craving that, and fame and glamour and attention, all that kind of stuff. But then those who do, it seems like, especially with the conversations I've had with people in the past, is there is some kind of dysregulation or dysfunction inside of them that's not necessarily financial related, but is stopping them from really feeling like a whole human being that is successful, when to the outside world they have that label but they don't feel it.
Right. So there are many themes, like minimum 30 different types of themes. So I couldn't say one, but to put a generalized statement to your question, it would be the desire to be a caregiver to some degree. So a lot of people who have a lot of things on their plates or in their schedules kind of show me, what are they managing? What are they caregiving for? Whether it's a team, family member, additional requests that they say yes to. So this term I've coined, the eternal caregiver. First of all, it's a beautiful thing to serve and to be of service, but is at an expense to your health, to your well-being, and to your business.
And then you see that that affects, I guess, how much time they actually have to do the real work.
To be themselves.
Yeah.
To be
Yeah.
themselves, to be of service to others, and to just be in the magnificence of who they are.
Mm. And what age were you as you started doing more of this kind of work? When you started working with those CEOs, I guess, the females.
728 when I started, and I did it for like pretty much pro bono in the beginning because I didn't know how to charge. I didn't know what my self-worth was. I didn't know what my value of healing was at that time. Yeah.
Did you feel any of your um experience from construction, project management, and people skills and business skills there kind of carried over? Did that support you in any way?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I could see a project end goal and all the different types of peoples and trades that needed to be on board in order to take this to the finish line. Yeah. And I'm used to seeing, like, I don't know, maybe 7 different timelines at the exact same time and being able to manage them and checking in with them. Yeah. Really used to seeing everything as an engineer with an engineer mind.
Did you study engineering?
No, I didn't, but this is how my brain works. Like, I know 20 things that are happening right now, like in your brain, that you want to connect the dots later on in this podcast.
I love that. That's the beauty of it, of the world, right? Like everyone is unique in their own way and what they have to offer the world. There was, so now my mind's going to another thing that you mentioned in our previous conversation around pricing. I don't know if you remember this example you gave me. There was a lady you were working with, and I'm asking this now actually because I have had a few conversations with people around pricing, and the fact that they struggle with figuring out what is the right price point. And a lot of that ties into self-worth. But I'm just curious to hear from your perspective working with people. There was someone you mentioned around, I think they were charging like 30 grand or something to a client, and you were like, let's just experiment with a different number. So I'd be curious for you to share a little bit around your thought process around not just pricing, but like finance and abundance in general, because there is so much information on that. But I feel like yours is unique in the sense that there is some tangible results there, not only for yourself, but for the clients that you work with. So it would be great to hear that firsthand, how you actually view that.
Sure. So, in order to tie up where we just were to this question, there's like a little gap. And so I would love to fill that in for our audience. And
Great,
so,
please do.
from when I was working with executives and they asked me to stay on for years after they were free and clear of a diagnosis, um, they started calling me a business healer, specifically a spiritual business healer. And that's what I've coined. That's my trademark, actually, the spiritual business healer. Because I quickly realized that whether it's a business decision like pricing and offering, who we're serving, who we're no longer serving, it all has to do with the energetics and the intention of it has to be tightly connected to the lessons that you have brought forward, and how good are you at helping not just others see lessons, but bringing them forward. We live in a time where personal development and spiritual development, I honestly think it looks like entertainment because not so many people take it seriously, right? So it's spiritual entertainment sometimes in a lot of what I see in this world. And so the real healers are able to help people not just see their lessons, but bring their lessons forward by, okay, this happened to you. How are we going to protect this in the future? How are we going to do this in a certain way and bring these lessons forward? So with this example that you just shared about a client that was charging 30,000, for example, for a package, I didn't say let's experiment. I asked her to do an experiment. And this experiment was, what was the goals of the last 5 clients that they came to you? And how long did it take you to support them getting to that goal? And so some of these clients would sign on for 30K for 6 months. And she quickly realized that she was helping them achieve their goals within 2 months. And whenever you can help somebody with the energy behind the results, because ultimately we don't take credit for the results. We take credit for helping them with the energy, the initiation. Then I say it's time for you to review your price points, because what you're doing is giving them accelerated results. And there's 4 more months of additional goals that could happen. So you could either, one, decide to make your containers and your offering smaller, or you can decide to charge based on the results. And everybody's very unique and different when it comes to pricing.
And how is your views, or I guess your perspective on finance, wealth, abundance, inspired the decisions or the conversations you then have with clients? Because obviously first and foremost, your own mindset and your own perspective on that stuff needs to be aligned in such a way that then you can inspire others to follow that same resonance.
Right. So my biggest philosophy is a philosophy that I learned from John Randolph Price. And it is this term that abundance and wealth is actually happiness having. So as long as you are having happiness in all areas of your life, you will experience unlimited wealth and abundance.
I love that. That's actually and there's so many teachers that teach a similar thing, and it's about which messenger resonates with you. But I've been the last few years, I've been listening to a lot of and consuming a lot of content from Abraham Hicks, which I'm sure you've heard of. But Esther says a similar thing. It's just like, people want the thing and then they'll be happy, because we think that in the having of it is where the happiness is, where in fact we have control. And I don't know if you agree with this or not, so it'd be great to hear your perspective, but we have control over our own internal thought process and the thoughts that we think, and how that then directs the emotion, which then affects how we feel. And then all the things that we want naturally come to us, or we're inspired to move in the direction of them, versus needing to have it and being stuck in what you don't have, which I guess feels like scarcity or lack. And then you're just stuck in a loop, because you're like, I don't have it, so I'm not happy. I don't have it, so I'm not happy. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pure scarcity. I believe if you're not happy, you will never achieve what you want to. There's no amount of speed, there's no amount of mentorship, there's no amount of mindset work or hustle, hours of hustle or 5 a.m. club, right? That will get you to happiness. It is something that you need to arrive at first in order to achieve. So kind of like the example that I mentioned without me going into this philosophy, my client was working with people for 6 months. She was getting them the results at 2 months on average. And what happens is she didn't set a second goal for her clients. And so her clients weren't happy because there was no more new goals to be achieved. And she felt incomplete as a healer and as a very conscious businesswoman. And so it's about, one, is the service provider happy in delivering the results in X amount of time and speed? And also, is the client happy throughout the whole duration of it? And so one of the things with me, if you're not happy, you're out of a contract. Basically, you don't have to be in a contract. I don't like being with people who are not happy. And most people in my energy are just about happy because of the the energy that I have the honor and the privilege to teach them through all my years of being mentored and the personal mentors that I have now.
What do you enjoy doing that helps you cultivate happiness?
Looking up at the sky and just realizing how small I really am, and the impact that I get to have with my little voice that I get right here in my home, speaking to you right now. So it's always looking up. It's looking up and reminding myself how connected I am, that I am a tiny, tiny piece of stardust in this universe and in this galaxy. And when I open my mouth, sometimes it can feel like a sun radiating out. And also understanding the opposite of that and knowing that if I don't use my voice for good, voices can be used for bad. And so being intentional and staying grounded and being focused of always being here for a greater reason. Because I know I've lived longer than I should have in many, many times. And I'm very grateful for every second that I get to stay here.
It's a blessing just to get another day to breathe, right? I sometimes, more often than not, try to have my first thoughts just be thank you, to get another day to be alive, because not everyone did wake up that day. Not everyone did wake up today for whatever reason. And the fact that I get to have this experience for another 24 hours is a nice way to start the day versus just rushing into the day without much intention. And I don't have an incredibly long concentration span, so I need to find practices that will help me. I know there's people that meditate an hour a day, 2 hours a day, morning, evening, blah blah blah, very disciplined. And I've just had to experiment and find what helps me shift in a way that works for my being. Because what works for everyone else doesn't, just because it works doesn't mean it's for everyone. You know, someone once said to me, everything works, but not everything is for everyone. And I found that to be true in not only the current practices I'm talking about, but like for even with um businesses that I'd started after law school. I can't remember if I told you in our last conversations, but I graduated from law school and then went on to start a number of online businesses on like Amazon FBA and eBay and blah blah blah. And they did well for a number of months, but they kept falling flat on their face. And it was because the end goal wasn't aligned to who I truly am and why I'm truly here. Like I actually was, in hindsight, craving to have impact beyond what I was doing, but I was like, no, money first, and then I can focus on passion and impact and blah blah blah. Financial freedom first. And I'm like looking for evidence of people where this business model that I'm doing is working. I'm like, but how are they getting all this money? And like I'm doing exactly the same thing. Why is it not working? And then obviously, as time goes on, you realize that what's meant for you will stay in your life if you heed the signs and the nudges, and what's not meant for you will fade away and fall away if you allow it to, and you're willing to let go of that. But yeah, not everything is for everyone, even though everything does work.
Yeah, you have to find your medicine. That's all.
Mm.
Taste the rainbow of medicines out there, right? For me, I also do not meditate. But what I do my nature walks. So I like forest bathe, and that really brings me closer to one consciousness.
I guess that is a form of meditation, right? Because meditation doesn't have to be like, I try and see it beyond just sitting in silence. Whatever makes you feel present.
Absolutely. And being in nature, that's for me. But then again, I am a projector in human design. So I get fed through nature.
Are you big into human design? Like, is that something that's a part of
I mean, it
your, you know what I mean? Yeah.
definitely helped me with understanding energy and in the energy that I have as a guide for people on this planet. Yes, it definitely helped me with that.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm a generator. So I don't know if you could tell that or not, but
Totally.
uh once, because I love having these tools to just be a little bit more self-aware, to have a mirror, I guess, to understand like, oh, okay, that's what resonates with me. I guess this is a cool label to understand more of who I am. Um, and then with Myers-Briggs, I'm INFJ as well. So I'm like, yeah, that makes sense because I love people, but I am at heart introverted and very, very intuitive, which in the past I thought was a bad thing because I was like, everyone else is working with like pros and cons and very structured and logical in their thinking. Some, not everyone, but some of the people who I was speaking to, like friends and colleagues and stuff, and I was like, well, I just know what's right. Is that like there was no thought process behind it. I just know.
Yeah.
And then I was made to feel like, yeah, but you haven't thought this through. Like as time's gone on, I've become more and more comfortable with knowing that actually that's just my superpower. That's one of my gifts, you know. Um,
An amazing gift to shine.
thank you so much. I appreciate that. Um, I'm just aware of the time, so I don't want to. I mean, we need to do multiple conversations, please. um,
An hour. Yeah.
sorry, say that again.
Totally good for another half an hour.
Oh, you are okay, cool. Um, so I was going to go into talking about more of the kind of stuff that you started doing in the second half of your career, I guess, in terms of the retreats and the stuff that you're doing now. But is there anywhere you want to take this conversation right now? Because I feel like we're at this beautiful pause right now where we can take it in any direction.
No, it's you get to lead this and drive this all the way home.
Okay, cool. Um, so 27, 28, like that's when you first started working and getting the nudge, I guess, from the universe that this is more of the work you need to do. How did your 30s unfold then?
Yeah, so I started working with like insurance companies. Okay. Insurance companies, started working with universities, helping people understand how to be compassionate. So I worked with like students in pre-med, helping them with bedside manner, what would really support them when giving a diagnosis, what would support them in um, being in the moment, being present, in the middle of an emergency room or in a clinic. So I started leading groups, helping them with compassion and being just present in the moment and realizing really, really quickly that my power has always been in compassion in the present moment. Ultimately that brings you peace, that brings you everything else. And for me, it brings me happiness. And through that time, all my clients kept telling me, Jeanette, you need to stop talking just to cancer patients. You need to work with business owners because the way that you see business and the intention, the spiritual side of it needs to be seen far and wide. So as I continued evolving and continued serving, I started working with some much bigger executives, entrepreneurs, and companies that were completely conscious. And they had been so conscious in the product development or in their service offerings, but not so much in their systems, not so much in how they run certain meetings. And so I would go in, pop in like Mary Poppins, pop out in about two months or so, and their business would be not only aligned energetically, but spiritually connected to where the entrepreneur and or the owner has healed from. And so every business starts off as a pain. And this is what my website says. Every business starts off with a pain, and we have a healing pain point that we create. But every business continues to have pain, and that shows and shares the opportunity to where they need to go next to be of service to humanity. So
Can we
kind
go
of,
through? Oh, sorry, go.
it's okay.
I was gonna say if we could just go through like I guess a typical, or maybe not so typical, an example of when someone engages you, typically a founder or CEO, and what they're coming to you for, and then how you step in and what that process ultimately looks like. Because obviously, business healing, from what I understand, in the way that you do it, in the way that you've coined it, is very unique. And just to put some more meat to the bone, it would be great to kind of walk through that process.
Sure. So most of the time people come to me as a referral. So because I'm very discreet, people know to trust me. Now, in the business world, a lot of people can look outwardly successful, really successful, but at the bottom line, their profit margins don't reflect that. And also their own self-worth doesn't reflect that. So when people come to me, they're either experiencing a term I trademarked called business trauma. They've experienced multiple business traumas that have prevented them from being able to soar like they did at one time. And it's usually I'm working with them for some level of confidence, but it's really a triaging their business trauma. So they come to me to a retreat for about 4 days. We heal the business traumas, we create a new system, and they are absolutely activated with what I call fire activation, which is this beautiful alignment of their business and their soul once again.
Mm. And is that do multiple people attend, or is that kind of one-to-one private and you just deep dive with them?
Some people prefer one-to-one, but I do this in small groups and I do these 4 times a year.
Do you see how that affects, like the way they're showing up affects the way they are with their families as well, in terms of the relationship with the business and how that affects other areas of their life?
Yeah, and in most of these, quote unquote successful entrepreneurs and CEOs that I've worked with, their family knows just how good it can be, and they're waiting for them to come to the realization that they need a new level of support and new eyes and a new perspective, and they're almost patiently waiting for them to get there again.
Mm. What do you find most of them are missing?
Oh,
Like, what's the missing link for them?
so I don't believe we're missing anything, right? I don't think we're missing anything. I feel like we live our life through dirty glasses sometimes. And sometimes you just need a 1 week refresh to clear the lens, to see ourselves clearly, to see our business clearly, to see our actions clearly, and to see the things we're not taking actions clearly. So if we had to say what was missing, it's their level of being able to see clearly.
Mm.
We're
So ultimately,
not broken. We're not
it's
broken.
yeah. I was gonna say we're whole just as we are, but it just requires some level of I feel like slowing down maybe to reflect on where, like you said right at the beginning, where am I right now?
Right.
Instead of pushing forward, pushing. Someone
I,
actually, it was a few hours ago, someone reached out and said, because I posted the new episode of my podcast, and someone's like, "Oh, you just inspired after a long break, you've just inspired me to post again because I was doing my podcast and then you posted, and I was like, oh, maybe I should start posting." And what I thought in that moment was, I did have a break a couple of years ago from the podcast for like a year and a half, and it was very much needed. I found it difficult to let go of it at first because I was like, no, but then people stop listening and my numbers, my followers, and blah blah blah. I was very in my head about it. But in hindsight, letting go of it actually created the space for new clarity to emerge, and the clarity doesn't necessarily come from pushing on, which we think is the answer naturally. It's logical, right? Let's keep going.
yes.
Um,
So many
but
people,
it's yeah,
yeah,
it's the opposite.
so many people stay in their dark night of their soul for much longer than they need to. And so in my retreat, it's a guaranteed awakening. So they can come 4 days, come in and out, get it out done and out of the way, and not drag on a 2 year process sometimes. So
And
just need a safe space. You need to know that you're going to be supported through the shed, and that there is structure to the awakening process.
yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about next, actually, in terms of the themes that you cover with them, or um that they go through every time they sit through those 4 days. Yeah,
So you know how you asked me if there was themes earlier, and I said there's just about 30 of them that I've identified.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we cover all 30 in a whole year of retreat. So some people come sign up for all 4 of them, and they'll cover all 30 during that time.
Oh, cool. Okay, so one person may not just come once; it's like multiple times throughout the year.
They choose to. Because when somebody comes, they get what I call fire activation. So it's not just in the one time inspired or spark, it's this drive and this hunger and this desire to bring their soul purpose forward through the expression of their business. That most of fire activations, they just need to come once a year to continue that fire going.
And how did I guess your personal life start to change and evolve as you started stepping into this work more?
How did it change and evolve? I got really compassionate with myself, right? And it was knowing that I didn't have the energy like everybody else. One, because I was a projector. Two, that I don't do business like other people. I'm not hustle culture. I don't wake up at 5 a.m. I don't meditate for 5 hours a day in order to be spiritual. But my truest work had to be in staying in my center. So connected to happiness, connected to, my highest power, joy, abundance, my wildest desires came to life through that. I have an amazing husband, and we're in the process of, wanting to grow our family and expand our family. So, I mean, how else has my life changed? Been I've had the pleasure of being in the most beautiful places in the world. I've been invited to Necker Island with Sir Richard Branson. I've personally worked with ascended masters, and they've asked me to continue their work on this planet. Like, I've been invited to Nobel Peace Prize teams, and it's just by me standing in my power.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared all that, because I want people to feel what's possible. Because we hear a lot of people that are doing this kind of stuff or similar in the sense of work that seems, or living a life that seems so far, that's only for the movies, basically, right? And I was thinking about this earlier in terms of us putting our idols on pedestals. And I've recorded an episode on this actually, which I'll be releasing later on. And realizing that the people that we put on pedestals are also human. They're not absolved of the problems and the situations and the emotions and the things that we're facing every day. And now I forgot my train of thought, but that felt like that I was going somewhere with that. But you know what I'm saying, right? Like, there's no difference between what you're now doing, because you weren't doing it all the time, and
Yeah.
the experiences, the life experiences that you're having, the people you're connected to, the money that you're making, it's not in a magazine somewhere, it's not in a movie somewhere, it's possible. And I just want people to feel that feeling of, oh, it's possible.
So I'm going to give 3 tiny steps to make it possible today. Stop saying yes to the things that you truly mean to say no to. That shrinks the timeline. 2, one thing that I did for about 2.5 years when I was 30 to 33, I took what I call, I became ear and eye celibate. So I didn't listen to podcasts. I didn't listen to audiobooks. I didn't read any new books, because I needed to know what my voice was. I needed to know who I was and my perspective, regardless of what I read and who I've been taught by. I needed to know myself. And during those 3 years, the third piece that I did is I took every freaking personality test on the planet, right? So I did everything in the world, because I need to know myself better than anybody. I need to know myself. And I'm going to use these different processes to understand myself so that I can help wire myself in a way that is towards happiness. So I did those 3 things. And those 3 things set the tone. And bringing it back to, like, stop putting idols on a pedestal. The one person that, like, I have looked up to and has spiritually mentored me, he said to me the other day, Jeanette, your vigor and your depth is unlike anyone I've known. How did you get that? I said, by not listening to anything, by not reading your books, by not like doing anything else. It was by me just knowing who I was, and knowing that who I was enough, and at the same time not better than anyone. This is one beautiful thing that I like to say is, just because I might know more about something doesn't mean I know better. And really, really using that as my law of humility. Just because I might know something more about business doesn't mean I know better than the next person.
I'm glad you touched on humility, because what I want to ask that continues on from that actually is, as you begin to build momentum and receive and magnetize quote unquote success, and your life expands in a whole new capacity, how do you maintain humility?
Again, saying this phrase all the time. I say, just because I might know more than the person next to me talking or whatever, whoever it is, right? Doesn't mean I know better, because they know best for their life. And then the other part, which I like to say, is that I am a gift, but my gift is not for everyone, and being okay with that.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, it's not for everyone. Because we can't serve everyone all the time. Before I wrap up, this has been amazing, and obviously we need to do another one whenever the time aligns for that again. But I loved what you said about being ear and eye celibate, because I literally went through that process myself in 2020. I just felt the desire to let go of all of the books, all of the podcasts, all of the YouTube stuff, physical books and audible books. Deleted my Audible membership. I was just like, it's all crutch. It's all a crutch. It's got me to this point, which is great. But the next stage is to not continue to accumulate knowledge. I need to let go of all knowledge and see what wisdom actually resides within me. What do I have to say about who I am and my relationship to the world? And I can't do that with all of this noise. And it was a very intuitive feeling, and I'm still in that space. And when I came out of, I guess when I began to come out of it, because it felt quite hardcore in 2020 as I was writing my book and just trying to feel into the stuff that was coming through me. I only let certain things in. I was like, there's only one or two books that I want to keep revisiting, that I want to keep. I'm not going to buy hundreds and download every new book on Audible every month and use all my credits and take recommendations from anyone and everyone. I just want to be very intentional about what I let in now, because I think when you go through that journey, you realize actually you have the most important thing to say that is in relation to your gift, because everyone's sharing what they feel is important from their perspective. And to keep your voice apart from all of that, you've got to be conscious to make sure that you are staying true to what your voice is, right?
And then it's reconfirming those three things: saying no to the saying yes, saying no to things you're saying yes to, right? And truly, truly, truly meaning it. And you only know that when it's your own mind, voice, and consciousness and spirit is in alignment.
Was there anything that you were saying no to that you really, wait, sorry. Is there anything you were saying yes to that you really meant no?
Oh, many, many things. It was many things. It was many, many, many things. And it's because I was stamped, got the diploma as an eternal caregiver, right? And I wanted to support and serve. But I realized that for me to be of service at the highest degree is to work with visionaries, work with the highest caliber people that are making huge ripples in the world already. And my voice and my heart and my light could really shine through with them and their missions. So aligning myself with them. And at one time, I was aligning myself with people that I shouldn't have. And my light helped them for a little while, but their intention was not pure.
Mm. Yeah, it all comes back to the self,
Always.
understanding who we are and our place in the world. Well, I have so much gratitude for you making the time and the energy to share today. Um, Beyond grateful. Uh, as we wrap up, what is the best place for people to connect with you, learn more about you, and engage with you?
Yeah, you could totally find me on Instagram at the Spiritual Business Healer. Um, I'm there, probably the platform that I'm on the most. And just connect with me, say hi. Tell me what your big, huge vision is in this planet. I'd love to support you in any way.
I love that. Thank you so much again, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.